Hi all. Today my guest is Vaishnavi Kulkarni. Vaishnavi is a senior product manager at Reya Health. Today we'll be discussing the role of digital healthcare in the oncology space. Interestingly, both Vaishnavi and I hail from Bengaluru, India. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Hi Vinay, thank you so much for having me on this episode of your podcast. My name is Vaishnavi. I'm a senior product manager at a health tech startup called Reya Healthcare. It's in India. I have led the development and I also lead the management of 5 healthcare products that are focused on specialties like gastroenterology, fem health, nephrology, oncology, etc. It's been 6 years since I've been working in this particular company, and it's been 7 years since I've been working in healthcare altogether.
Okay. So have you always been in healthcare, and what brought you to healthcare?
Right. Like every other Indian parent, right, of our generation, like they have children of our generation, they always want you to be an engineer or a doctor. And by degree, I'm an engineer. And then by osmosis, I think I'm becoming a doctor now. Just kidding, but my work revolves around working with doctors and other healthcare professionals along with patients and other stakeholders. But when it comes to actually being in healthcare, the incidents that led me to being in healthcare, I was introduced to healthcare quite early in my life. So I have first-hand experience being at the receiving end of the lack of management and lack of accessibility of resources, especially in women's health and mental health for patients who are undergoing intensive therapies and support for their families. Just to give you an example, my mom used to have really bad episodes of migraine. Right, and as a teenager, I saw my dad undergoing really rigorous treatment for his glomerulonephritis, and my mom underwent a really frustrating and painful menopause journey with little to no help that she could seek out to. Even if there was, she did not know, or we as a family didn't know, and it was very difficult for us to, handle all of these situations. So growing up, I saw a lot of gaps in healthcare delivery systems. And then later on, I got introduced to products, especially digital products, and its ability to facilitate problem solving in especially, healthcare space. I was interning at this company called Lollipop. It's a design studio in Bangalore, India. And my first product that I worked on was a news portal for healthcare providers. Our client was one of the India's largest hospital chains, multi-specialty hospital chains. And I got an opportunity to meet with doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and all the other players in the providers, team. And I got to experience their work environment in real life. So that these experiences tapped into the inherent passion that I had for healthcare. Yeah, that's my journey.
Okay. And was there a particular group of or type of patients did you interact with? Any particular specialty you worked with?
Right. Once I finished my internship, my husband and I met with a few oncologists at one of India's largest, oncology specialty hospital chains, HCG, and the doctors there were they actually believed in the power of digital solutions in enhancing patient, outcomes and care delivery. So they were interested in solving problems in patient experience to improve outcomes. So we started, interacting with those doctors, sitting through multiple clinic visits with the patients. I got the opportunity to see a lot of different specialists within the oncology department, and patients in different stages of their therapy or even post-therapy, and different problems and different routes of therapies that they opted for. So that's my introduction into oncology, and I spent many hours through weeks interacting with the doctors and the patients. What we realized was that the problem is, yes, there is a problem in the way the care delivery happens in the clinic, but the problem also is what happens when what happens when the patient is outside the clinic, right? So when we look at a cancer patient, we see that the cancer patient is going through chemotherapies or has undergone surgery, and they have specific traits that you can say, okay, this is a cancer patient. But then they are also not, people like us, they also have jobs to get back to. Or they had jobs when they entered the therapy. They have school to get back to. They have a social life. They have commitments, aspirations, and managing that part was a huge gap, right? So there were not many solutions, at least in India, to manage that aspect for a patient. Once they got into these therapies, that was probably it for them. Their life revolved around that. Their life revolved around, okay, today I have to go to chemotherapy, and tomorrow I'll be sick, so I'll have to apply for leaves, or I have to take, I have to probably quit my job, and I cannot meet people because I look a certain way. So these were the issues, and they did not have, or they didn't know how to ask for help or find resources and reliable education sources where they could educate themselves, educate their family members in handling the different challenges that they faced in their journey.
So, it's a really long journey, right, for patients, especially in the oncology space, the cancer, from the time of diagnosis, even identifying, right, like how soon you identify is the key in the treatment. So, and also from diagnosis, treatment to post-treatment, right? So there's a long stage which goes on. So can you tell, like, in terms of the digital technology, how is that playing a role, and your experience, especially in this space, of what you've understood, what they go through, and how in today's technology is helping them have a better enhanced experience, both for the patient as well as the doctor.
Right. So starting with the different phases of the cancer journey. If we look at it just in the phases of, okay, the patient gets their condition diagnosed, and then they choose a specific therapy or combination of therapies. They undergo the therapies, and then there is a recovery phase, and then there's a rehabilitation phase, and then they get back to a redefined normal life. But most people or many people unfortunately don't get to that final stage, right? But if we look at it just as an isolation of these phases, we will be not seeing a lot of issues, or will not be able to understand the whole world of problems that the cancer patients are experiencing. So while they are undergoing these phases, right, there's a diagnosis phase where they enter the GP's clinic. Most often than not, they enter the GP's clinic, and then with a list of symptoms, and then the GP asks them to go to the after running a few tests, they say, okay, you need to see a specialist, right, like a gastroenterologist or a pulmonologist. And then they go to the specialist, and then the specialist prescribes, reviews their history, their symptoms, and then they prescribe a set of medications, and then they also prescribe a set of labs and investigations. It could be as simple as, a few lab tests, blood tests, or it could be like an MRI, CT, PET scan, or a biopsy even. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But then once there's an indication that this is a malignancy, then they are sent to an oncologist. So depending on whether it's a solid tumor or lymphatic or hematic tumor, hematologic malignancy, they are sent to one of these specialists. Now, these specialists put down a series or strategy for their treatment. It could be if the tumor is viable for surgery, they do the surgery. Before that, they have biopsies taken or reviewed. Their staging is done, and with that information and a rigorous review of the patient's past history, they are given a list of pathways that they can take. If the tumor can be surgically removed, or surgical path is the way to go, then they suggest surgical methods, or it's a combination of surgery and chemo, or surgery or chemo and surgery, whatever combination, or radiotherapy, or immunotherapy, etc. Once they get that done, either if it goes in the positive manner, if the outcomes are positive, then after multiple cycles they are given the status of remission, right? And then the patient is has to go back to their life, and then keep monitoring themselves by taking frequent or at a particular cadence assessments to see whether the cancer is still in remission or if it has recurred. This is the overall, just a summarized view of the whole flow. But then now, if you look at it, they also have to come back to their life, their relationships, their work, their school, etc. after going through each of these visits at the hospital. Right? So most of the time the problem will be on adherence towards these therapies. So for example, let's take the scenario of a chemotherapy. The patient is undergoing multiple cycles of the chemotherapy, and between 2 cycles of chemotherapy, they are susceptible to multiple infections. They're susceptible to symptoms ranging from hair loss to profusely purging, and they have to be hospitalized. That could even result in life-threatening complications. So all of these do impact families as well as their other relationships, their work, their progress, and their own outlook on life. Even if all of these were a successful endeavor for them, at the end of their journey, what happens is they come out with a lot of body image issues, or they have lost family members, or their relationship with their family members because of the pressure of this treatment. And I saw a lot of survivors talking about these things and having no support, even with visiting psychiatrists or psychologists, specifically oncopsychologists, right? Psychiatry is a specific area that deals with patients who are suffering from cancer. They don't have access. Either it's because there are not many reliable doctors that they are comfortable going to, or the family members don't find it very comfortable to send them, or the patients themselves don't like opening up, right? So mental health is also a huge issue for the patients. Most of the stories that we see today are by a feisty few people who either had access to these resources and had the support, or who had the courage to ask for it, when to ask, they knew when to ask for it, or they learned how and when to ask for it and whom to ask for it. But not many people have that, and those are the stories that get lost, and that is the problem space that people working with the oncology department or any other problem, you're trying to solve problems in any other chronic illnesses or life-threatening illnesses, have to be in the problem space of what happens, yes, in the clinical setup, as well as what happens outside that clinical setup.
So what about the families, right? Yes, you spoke about the patient and the oncopsychologist, and that's a really nice thing. I never thought you go to the doctor, almost the doctor becomes your psychologist too, because they tell based on the experience. But having a dedicated psychologist is definitely going to be helpful because they have multiple strategies on how to help the patients, right? Because that's their main line of work. So what about the families who are like the patient's spouse or children or like the parents? How does the digital healthcare technology or the processes help alleviate some of their challenges?
Right. So one thing is with COVID, right? Everything became remote, right? Finding a doctor became remote. Now, finding a peer group for your type of cancer or the age group of patients who are undergoing similar age group of patients who are going through the same type of cancer or cancer itself in different stages, right? Connecting with them has also become much more easier. You don't have to have a remote care platform or any sort of accessibility platform. You can just do that on Facebook. Of course, it doesn't give you the entire flexibility that a dedicated and optimized platform can give you, but that could be the first step. Also finding psychiatrists. If you don't, most of the time it's difficult to step out of the house, not just for oncology patients. Of course, they do suffer from a lot of body image issues, but in general, the problem with seeking mental health is to step out of the house, right? That is the most daunting activity for any patient looking for support. But then because of digitization or digital solutions, there is an ability to connect with the doctor by sitting inside your home. Connecting with a peer group by just sitting within your the confinement of your home. Similarly, the family members, they can sit at home and get help from specialists to understand what their loved one is going through and how they can take care of the loved one as well as themselves and help the children who are being affected by these illnesses, or that because not exactly by these illnesses, but a family member undergoing that illness, and that those effects on the children can be quite daunting. They can also today access resources, but there is a need for reliable resources of education. So education plays a huge role in helping patients and family members go through the journey a little bit easier, or making their journey a little bit easier. But unfortunately, there are not many reliable resources where they can get knowledge in layman language. Most of the time, they will have to try and understand all the medical jargon that is being used in these resources, and sometimes they end up, looking at educational materials that may not be reliable. Like the ones that use your language or the language that you understand, they may not be the most reliable source or verified source by a doctor. So this is also another problem that the doctors were trying to solve. They were trying to create a repository of reliable education resources that a patient and their family members can understand, right? But there is at least back then, there was no reliable platform that was accessible for these patients.
Got it. That's interesting. So these are all like external to clinical systems, right? Because when you think of EMR, you only look at like appointments or who's your patient, the details, diagnosis information, and maybe there's medications, labs involved. So is there anything which needs to be built on top of this, or like EMR is lacking, right? Clearly what you said is not what I've seen in the EMR today. So what are the other things which lacks in this EMR clinical systems?
Right. So the EMRs are designed beautifully to solve administration related problems, like administrative problems, like, okay, you need to schedule something, you need to understand what is the inventory that you have, how many beds are booked, etc. Right? So most EMRs work really well, but There are a lot of limitations to the EMRs. First being the cost itself. There are a lot of clinics, at least in India, the small clinical setups in India, that cannot afford an EMR. So what they do is they rely back on pen and paper. Most often they're not, right? Or they have EMRs. The hospitals that can afford EMR setups. The problem that I've seen with doctors is it runs on a desktop, right? So while they are looking at a patient and looking at the desktop, most often they're not, because of the size of the device itself, they're not able to establish a relationship with the patient. And doctor-patient relationship is very important for a good patient outcome. At least that's a very that's one of the more important variables in the patient outcome, according to most doctors. Third issue is while you're talking and you're typing, it becomes too difficult. I'll give you an example. One of the doctors that I was observing, they were typing in notes as the patient was talking to them, and they were conversing with the patient, asking for patient's history. And because they found typing and talking very difficult, and one of the problems that they were trying to solve is the grammatical errors that they were making while typing, they had installed a grammar correction software. So this grammar correction software was not optimized to recognize clinical data. This patient had a history of hypertension, and in short, it's called HTN. Now the grammar correction software did not recognize HTN as a word, so it suggested that HTN be changed to then. Because the doctor was more focused on the patient, as a habit, they just hovered on it, they selected then, and then they just moved on. They forgot that they had written HTN, which is a patient's condition, and that got changed to then, which means that a very important data point of the patient having a history of hypertension was lost, right? Because it was not the mistake of the doctor, because the doctor's job is to try and solve the problem and make the patient's outcome positive, right? But then the EMR or the software solutions that they're using should aid in that and not be a hindrance. Now, of course, the EMRs have a way of capturing structured data. If they were capturing structured data around these conditions, they need not have typed in. But the problem with structured data is it's a lot of investment. Time and energy is going into entering these structured data, because the design of the solution is not optimized to work easily for them. And then the return of investment of this time and effort is not that great. So the placement of all of these data points that they've added, say they're looking at a dashboard, they should be able to see it in a fashion that makes a lot of logical sense to them. It follows their mental model. Okay, what is the history of the patient? What is the medications that they are taking? What is the social history of the patient? But unfortunately, many EMRs fail in displaying the information that has been added in a format that follows their mental model. So the amount of effort that they are putting into adding structured data into the EMR versus what they receive does not match in their minds, rightfully so. Some data is hidden under multiple tabs, or you have to take like a lot of steps to access a specific data point. So, and second is that for structured data, there are a lot of data that is still in physical records. Moving that into a digital format, that itself takes a long time, and doctors don't have the luxury to do that. And these are some limitations that I see.
Got it. So is there a solution already out there in the market which will help solve this challenge, or is it a problem which is left to be solved?
Right. Of course, healthcare is such a vast sea that it's, or ocean rather, that it's there's always a better solution out there, or there's always room for improvement. But there are a lot of companies that are working on solutions, but not EMR solutions, but a solution that sits on top. It's like a plug-in solution, starting from structuring the collection of structured clinical data, and making it, or optimizing the display of the data and accessibility of the data that matches the mental model of the doctors, which encourages the doctors to actually put in that effort there's another application out there that works on recognizing clinical speech data, while so this software sits in the background and records an in-clinic visit, and it translates or transcribes the speech to text of this clinical data. So all of these issues of HTN being converted to then does not, is at least avoided in such a software, such a software solution. So there's a plethora of applications out there that work in solving this problem. But I'm really curious to see where the world goes in solving this problem.
Yep. And I love the solution. I don't want to type, just speak, and everything else behind the scenes. Probably there's AI or something which is sitting on top of it, which will structure this conversation, right? So that's amazing. I would love the doctor to focus on me rather than typing the notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is a lot of data involved here, right? And also when it comes to like today's diagnosis treatment, it's not just local, it's global, right? There is people coming to India for global medical tourism, or you are going to other countries like Dubai, which is also facilitating a lot into medical tourism. So there is a lot of data, and I don't want to be carrying files from one place to other. So how does interoperability work between various countries, and the importance of it?
Right. So different countries have different rules around, healthcare data, right? So solving that problem is going to be extremely difficult and also expensive. One of the limitations of EMR is interoperability altogether, right? So let's take the medical tourism example, and let's just isolate it to within India, for example, right? A patient, say, is in Bihar, okay, and they travel all the way to Bangalore to get a kidney transplant done. Now the patient has a surgeon who has done the transplant here, and there is another specialist who is taking care of them post the surgery for recovery. And then the patient is advised to go back to their hometown and have a local doctor there, or GP or a nephrologist, who will constantly look after the patient. And then once a year they have to come back to Bangalore to the same specialist, for a review. Now, because that particular nephrologist in their hometown is not using the same system that my surgeon and the specialist was using in Bangalore, the patient has to carry physical records, right? The problem can be the nephrologist does not have an EMR. If they have an EMR, it doesn't talk to the EMR that I have here, right? So they still have to carry physical records. Same thing, I have seen the problem in patients from, say, Middle East coming to India, or patients from India going to one of the Western countries to be part of clinical trials, because there are no standards, first of all, followed. There's no single standard that is followed by EMRs to exchange health data. There is a prevalence of physical records being taken, and then there is a lot of issues in doctors missing out a specific data point in their history, and that actually making a huge impact on their journey. The best way, in my opinion, to do it as of today would be to have the data accessible to the patient in a digitized format. So instead of having physical records, we should work on an ability to at least give visit summaries to the patient in a digitized format, even if it is like, okay, you are sending a PDF to the patient and then the patient takes it to the next doctor that they are going to, right? That solves a lot of problems. The rules in different countries are different, so depends on where you are in the world. So for example, in the UAE, the data has to data is centralized in Malafi, right? And in US there is a law saying that the patient has to get access to their records when requested. So it's very difficult to bring everything to one format and also facilitate the exchange and interoperability. I dream of a day where this is possible, but until then we will have to find these interim solutions to facilitate good data collection and history review, so that the patient's outcome is kept in the mind as the primary goal, right? So we can have a lot of interim solutions like this.
Good. And here in the US, HL7 or the FIRE format is the most common one to make these systems interoperable. So are you saying it's not the same format which is followed across the globe?
Yeah, I'm not the best person to answer this question, but in my experience, that has been the case. While we were trying to integrate with other systems, HL7, there are different formats that they are following, if they are following, right? That's not the case. So in my experience, we've had a lot of issues in interoperability because of the standards not being the same.
Got it. That's a really good insight you provide, and digitizing the records so you can take them, and maybe a little bit more less painful than taking the files itself. Right?
Yeah.
So going back to the oncology, so what is the how do you envision the future experience of patients?
Right. So there's a digital therapeutics is going to be the future, and precision medicine is going to be the future, right? So looking at software solutions as patient-facing software solutions making a huge impact in the patient journey. And then precision medicine, where you have access to all the data of your environment, your lifestyle, and your genomic data, right? So, and personalizing therapies to help the patient recover from the condition much quicker or at a better rate with a better outcome. Another way of looking at this is also a combination of multiple types or schools of medicine, right? So just by focusing on the patient's medications or different therapies, in traditional medicine practice is no longer enough, right? So there are a lot of organizations out there working towards helping the patient with their overall or holistic care, right? There are a lot of or clinics set up in India that is working on helping the patients reverse their chronic conditions, including cancers, right? So that, I think, is going to be the future of patient journey, where the patient is looked at in a holistic fashion and not as one organ, a specific condition, and I'm just going to cure that particular problem. So the medicine is maturing towards looking at the patient in a holistic manner, and precision medicine and digital therapeutic is going to play a huge role, in my opinion, in facilitating that.
And I really love your thought. Like, it's not about managing your disease or your ailment. Like, how do I reverse in a way that I don't have the disease anymore? I think that's where the investment should be, than just managing or like getting past with it, right? So that way there is a better outcome from all these things. So One last question before we wrap up. What are your, do you have any tips for any uprising consultants like you and me, or people who want to get into the health industries? You've been in health industries from a long period of time. So what are your tips for them?
Yeah. So I would say be in the problem space as much as possible, because being in solution space is a byproduct of being in the problem space and understanding the problem space in a much deeper manner, right? Problem meaning talk to the doctors, talk to nurses, talk to patients, observe them, be a patient yourself and observe how things go. If you're looking at a post clinic setup where you're looking at the patient's journey, try to observe those and try to see the problems, right? Identifying the right problem is more important than producing fast solutions, and that would be my advice, if I may say so. Yeah.
Got it. And that's a lovely thought you shared. And putting themselves or ourselves into their shoes. I mean, of course, we don't want to become patients. I don't want my listeners to become patients, but being close to them and understanding the problem in depth. Thank you, Vaishnavi. I really enjoyed the conversation, learning oncology and like what exactly happens and how this whole thing can resolve from start to the end. So thank you so much for being on this show.
Thank you so much, Vinay. I had a lovely time. Thank you. Bye.